Hi, this is Jen Buehler with DIY Anyone, and welcome back for another fun video today. I am participating in a fall Dollar Tree challenge with Sonja from Domestic Diva and her sister Vesna TV, and I just love making pumpkins. So I know that these don't necessarily go like as a grouping, they're meant to go separate, but anyway, here we go. So this really pretty burlap, had it for several years, and I used to put it out just as a decoration underneath something, like on the counter. And so I decided to cut it up and use it for the pumpkin. And unfortunately, the footage for this is horrible. I apologize, but I've got the burlap sandwiched between two of those Dollar Tree frames. And I couldn't find those frames anywhere, so I just bought a case of them because I wanted to be able to make as many as I felt like. So anyway, sometimes that's what you got to do. Then you can see the little pink clips that are holding that in place, the two little frames in place. And then what I'm going to do next is just use computer ties to then put the frames together. Now I've got the nautical rope, our favorite thing, and the nautical rope is going to go on the outside to cover it up. Now, one thing that I'm really sad that didn't make it in this footage is that what I put inside of this pumpkin is some potpourri. And that way, when you walk by, you can smell that little bit of potpourri. Made a messy bow, and that's all Dollar Tree ribbon or the wired jute twine. And that's all, just like I say, just a messy bow, just to add something cute there to it. So that is project number one. And I love that little thin ribbon with the pumpkins on it. It's really, I think it's so cute. All right, so for project number two, coming right up, I've got now that tan and black buffalo type gingham, and I'm using one of the Dollar Tree pumpkins, just the orange on the other side that says thankful and blessed, saving that ribbon, that jute twine, because I reuse all of that. And I cut that out to go on top of it. Well, now I've heard all y'all talking about using glue sticks to glue stuff down instead of using Mod Podge. Well, this paper is really heavy. So I put it on there and I pushed it down and it came up. And I pushed it down and it came up. And I let go of it and it came up. And so I'm like, yeah, forget about it. So thank goodness I had another piece of paper. I set that aside. I will reuse that paper, obviously, some other way. And I cut out another one. And we're going to go to good old Mod Podge. So I cut that out and then I put a pretty healthy coat of Mod Podge down, and then I'm going to add that paper. And even still, it wanted to still peel up, but you'll see what my solution was, and it actually worked really well. The other thing that I end up doing with this is distressing the edge of it with a little bit of a chippy brush and some ink colored Waverly ink color black paint, and that helped to give it a little bit of more of definition on the edges. It helped. So here we're going to flip it over, and then I'm just going to put a bunch of heavy stuff on it so that I don't have to stand here all day and hold it, because yeah, ain't nobody got time for that. So we'll flip it over. See, it still wants to peel, but I'm like, what? All right, so there we go. That's my solution, and that worked quite nicely, actually. Then I just used some jute twine for the stem, and then that bow is made from Dollar Tree ribbon and a little bit of lamb's ear. The lamb's ear came from Wish, and I wish I hadn't spent the money on that lamb's ear because it was horrible. Okay, now, next project. So I like to get every last bit of paint that I can, so I opened a brand new can of mineral, or jar of mineral, and just putting that for some contrast in the back of the pumpkin. And I'm going to use some orange burlap with this, and then the hula skirt. Going to braid that up and make some cute little braids to have and do some weaving. And the main thing is when you stop braiding, just measure your pumpkin to be sure that you've got enough of the length that you've braided before you stop. And see, so I kind of hold it there. Then I've got some pieces of the orange burlap that I held up, and you can see at the very bottom I glued that down, And then I'm just flipping it and doing the weaving like you did when you were a kid, and the back and forth sort of deal. And it was just a fun way to give a pumpkin just a little bit of texture. You could certainly do this with plain tan burlap, any color you want. And I have to say, since we just had snow here yesterday, and we have so little actual fall colors, that I pretty much embrace any kind of color I can bring in a fall. So you probably won't see a lot of neutral stuff from me just because I love the color so, so much. And I do love the neutrals that folks are doing. It's pretty. But like I say, we had snow yesterday. Snow on September the 9th. What is the dealio? And fortunately, it didn't wreck all the trees and the gardens. Everybody covered everything up. But boy, that's an early snow even for us here in Colorado. All right, now you see my paint stick. Again, covered with that Flex Seal stuff. Boy, that is the best thing ever because it just doesn't stick to anything and yet makes it where I don't burn my fingers. Then after I figured out the amount of the raffia, then I cut it. And initially I cut it longer, and you'll see at the very end I ended up trimming it to the border of the pumpkin. I think it looks a little nicer. And then I just did a messy bow on the top of this. That is from Walmart, that little gingham, yellow gingham. It has a little black stitching line in. It's real cute. And then just the burlap. And again, a little messy bow. And then I'm going to add that little silver leaf back to it that was on the other side of the pumpkin. And I think that makes another cute little project. And then you see with the messy bows, you're just going to make sure you have the ribbon right side up. Even though the other side may show, it's nice to make sure at least you start with the right side up. And then just stagger your ribbons back and forth. And I also tried to graduate the sizes of them so that they were a little bit smaller as the bow came to the top. And then trim your ends, make them cute. You can dovetail them, or even just cutting them at an angle is cute too. There we're pinching that together. And then I just took a piece of old jute twine. It was the end of a roll, and I just used that on the back of that and rolled that up and then put a little extra glue to reinforce it. And then you have that extra woven effect in the center of the bow. Makes it cute. And I sure would appreciate if you would consider subscribing to my channel and give it a big thumbs up if you like what you see. And also, too, anything in the comments that you can give me as feedback to let me know what you'd like to see. I love crafts. Love this. It is so, so fun for me, and I'm so pleased to be able to have this outlet. Okay, so you'll be able to see that I did trim that pumpkin away later. Now, last pumpkin, I'm going to do a little more weaving, and this time I'm going to use the burlap. I used the pumpkin from Dollar Tree that had the little raised sections on it, and that made a nice way to know where I wanted to place the burlap. I pulled the string so you can see it creates that little cutting line with burlap that makes it nice. And so then I just wanted to put I wanted to glue it down just a touch, but I wanted to weave this, so I had to really think about, okay, where was I going to weave it so that it wouldn't be too much, where I couldn't then do the opposing, the warp and the weft, I couldn't do the opposing piece of weaving the other direction. So I'm just gluing a little bit on each of these stripes here, doing it opposite. On the edges, it's easy. And again, just doing a little bit opposite. And you'll see here in a little bit, I kind of had to do some thinking on the fly because I did a good job of gluing stuff down in the center for the center section, and I couldn't weave the burlap back through the center. So had a little bit of extra help in what I was going to do here. So I'm just trimming that out. All right, so now I'm going to try and weave that the opposite direction. Put that piece through, and oops, it's too tight, and there's no tension at all to that burlap. So I'm like, oh crud, and I just envisioned ending up unraveling all that. So I took that's a piece of the cardboard that wrapped the burlap and just glued that to it, and I'm going to use it as a leader, if you will, to help put that through the sections that I want to weave. And that's just, like I say, a very, very light cardstocky type paper. And you can see that this actually works really, really well to make it so I can just weave it how I want to. So then just over and under. And there it goes. I say it works really well. So remember that little trick, because boy, that sure bailed me out on this one. And right on through it, pulled it. Can line stuff up where I wanted it, and then just cut that extra. Just be sure you do have a little extra so that that piece that you glued onto your leader, the cardboard piece, you've got enough that you don't short yourself when you're going to cut. So pull it through a little bit more. Yeah, be a little more cautious. There we go. So the rest of the process here is going to be basically just weaving stuff. Now on the sides there, it was very easy to form that burlap to that curved section, which I think turned out just really cute. And then the next thing I'm going to do is just glue things down and cut around that border of that raised section. And it really made a nice little, that little raised section made it nice to know where to cut and how to cut. And so just cutting along that made it just real cute. Glue a little bit more, make sure it's all glued. And then the fun part was cutting in between the sections too. You'll see that here. So we just cut right along the edge. And then the secret is to go back and just be sure that all your areas are glued down so that nothing comes loose. But look how cute that comes out. And gives a little bit of definition, has a little bit of extra dimension to it with the weaving. Whoa, sorry, I didn't mean to make you dizzy there. Extra fancy pumpkin spin there. And you can see there it is. So now the process of just going back and gluing down all the different sections is all we need to do from there. Then I'm like, well, what else can I do to this? So I decided to get some of the Waverly black chalk paint and try and speckle it. And that little brush was worthless. That did not do it. So then I'm like, all right, let's get the big mama brush out. And so I got the bigger brush out, and that, you can see, did some nice speckling just to add, again, a little interest to the eye. And then one of those real pretty salmon colored burlap flowers from the Dollar Tree. Cut the back of it off to make it sit as flat as you want it to. And then just hot glue it to where the leaves and everything sit to where it's pleasing to your eye. And again, thank you to Sonja and Vesna. It's been so cool to be able to have these challenges to participate in. And I really enjoy watching their channels. And you've got to go see. Sonja has 3 channels. Vesna has a couple. And boy, they do some neat work with their crafts. So you've got to go take a peek at their channels. Their playlists will be listed down below in the drop-down box. And I sure hope to see you again here on DIY Anyone. Thanks, and make it a great